Welcome to the CX Matters podcast. My name is Justin Tippett, CEO of AXPA, and in this episode, I am joined by Rod Netterfield. Now, Rod is on our advisory board for customer experience for AXPA, and in his day job, he's the director of a company called HuMind. Welcome, Rod.
Brilliant. Thank you, Justin, for having me.
Welcome to the AXPA CX Matters podcast. In this episode, Rod, we are going to be talking all about customer personas. We know it's a pretty hot topic, and I thought who better to get on the show than the man who deals in this space all the time. So I guess my first question to you, Rod, is what is a customer persona?
Yeah, thanks, Justin. Yeah, and look, it's probably one of the two most commonly received requests that I get from a customer experience perspective. So a customer persona ultimately is a semi-fictional character. And so we use qualitative and quantitative research and bring that together to, I guess, represent a group of customers that use our products or our services or engage with our brand in some way. And so I guess in the simplest sense, I think about customer personas as bringing together something to help us understand who our customers really are. And so when a team or an organization uses personas, it allows us to really connect with customers in a deeper way. And ultimately, we build products, services, and experiences that better meet their needs.
Right. So that makes perfect sense. But I guess the other word that we hear bandied around a lot is segments. Customer segments.
Oh yes.
so for the people that are listening, what's the difference between a customer segment and a customer persona?
Yeah, definitely. Look, it probably is one of those ones that does grate a little bit when you hear it because people are using the terms interchangeably and ultimately incorrectly so, in that they are two really different tools that have two really different purposes. So when you think about customer segments, I guess those are based upon grouping customers into really distinct, specific and known quantities or characteristics. So like age range or income or life stages, are typically used from a segment perspective. And the segments help us understand, who is it that exists in a market in what sort of quantity. When we think about the personas, though, again, the reminder that they're semi-fictional in nature and they're formed from synthesized sets of observations and data and are more representative in nature. And so they've got goals and motivators and pain points and so on. And really the persona is much more there as a driver for creating empathy for a group of customers within your organization.
Because you can, I guess, in your mind, picture someone real, right? You're sort of going, oh, I'm actually talking to this person. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of the template, let's call it, that you might create inside your organization. And if you do a Google search for customer personas, you'll see that there's really not a set template in that, one size fits all approach. And that's both good and bad, I can recognize. But the really important consideration is that you want a persona to be used and leveraged within your organization. So you need to think about the purposes for why you're creating it. And then you'll create a persona template that is going to suit that need. But if you think about the templates and what I commonly would put in there, if that makes sense, yes, they'll have a name and they'll have an age and a backstory. They'll have locations, needs, goals, pain points. More often now, though, I'm also seeing that people are putting technology uses into their personas, particularly off the back of some of the COVID changes that we've seen and how life has been disrupted by that.
So picking up on that point, like what would an example be of a persona, if you like, that references technology? Because I think you're right, that's something that's probably pretty current at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's around... the personas about, how are people using, mobile technologies, or are they using desktops, or, are they using Alexas and Siris and, the sort of the speech interactions and interfaces with your business as well.
Yep. So if we had a fictional character or a persona, I should say, the name might be Emily. It might be I'm just slotting in my daughter's name very conveniently. But Emily is X age. We know that this is what she buys. She typically uses Messenger on Facebook, or WhatsApp. Is it that kind of level of detail that we get into in personas?
Yeah, definitely. And it's more that you want to create a richness and a backstory there, something that people can really resonate with.
Yep.
Interesting that you mentioned that you've used your daughter's name, and that's probably my big caution, is that you try not to actually base it off just a single person. And also, importantly, don't base it off someone that you know really well, because they're designed to be semi-fictional in nature.
Yep. And if you do that, clearly you're going to resonate
Yeah.
and think of that person, not necessarily a broader persona.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you ultimately might actually then make it less effective for you to utilize as something when you're creating those products or services and whatnot.
Yeah, because I guess it comes with those prejudices because you know that person, right? So
definitely, yeah, always. You've got to caution your bias, always.
Yeah, I love it. Good tip. So we've sort of explained to people, I guess, what a persona potentially could look like and the level of detail. How do you go about creating one? You did mention sort of do a Google search for templates, but you're going to get a whole range of stuff.
You will.
So how do you go about it? If you're in an organisation, you go, yeah, we love it. Sounds great, Rod. You've got us really keen. Where do you get started?
Yeah, definitely. And I think you've got to work out, well, why are you creating something like this? Unfortunately, there's a lot of people I speak to that have created beautiful personas or other artifacts in a CX space, but they don't have a specific need or a specific use that they have in mind. And so unfortunately, these things sometimes become, something that sits on the virtual shelf or becomes a lovely piece of wall art. And so I think you've really got to think about, well, what is the purpose of why we're creating this? So if I go to my experiences, the customer personas are typically one of two main drivers. So the customer personas are created as a component of a journey mapping project. And I know we can talk about journey mapping in another one of these podcasts.
Yep.
But also we talk about personas often when there's a really big strategic project that may be being delivered, and there's a bespoke set of customer personas that may be created to actually help drive a customer centricity for that strategic project to deliver.
Yep. And I know, and as I said, you do this for a living in terms of consulting for CX, and typically I guess the budgets come for doing those projects with the bigger companies, but equally, if money aside and skill set aside, it could easily apply to a small business as much as a corporate, right?
Completely so, yeah. And this is what I think is the beauty of a lot of the customer experience methods, if you like, in that they can be scaled to suit the size of your business. And more often than not, yes, there is technology solutions there that can help you do this maybe more effectively or more efficiently, but there's actually nothing stopping you doing any of these things, literally just applying your own effort. You don't have to go and speak to hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of customers. You can get a level of empathy starting to build within your organization and a level of customer centricity, even from a small amount of customer research, 5-10 interviews even. Ultimately, it's better than doing no interviews at all.
Yep. Yeah, that's very true. How do you get buy-in, in terms of organisation? Because there's still some perception around if you're built, I guess, a persona and you go, well, this is, we've got 5 personas. Is there a magic number? First of all, I should have asked that question. Is there a magic number of personas for an organisation?
Oh, no. And this is probably the question I get asked the most about, I just want you to come and build me 3 personas. And it doesn't really work that way.
Yep.
I hate to give generalizations, but generally speaking, yes, we might end up with 3 to 5 personas typically in a project.
Yep.
I have sometimes seen as small as 1 and sometimes as many as 8. But you don't define that up front. If we go back to remembering that this is a semi-fictional character that comes together from bringing your qualitative and quantitative data, I should say, together, how those things will cluster together to form that persona, which describes, how these people are acting and how they might want to engage with you. It will come out of that process. It's not something you define up front and then build towards.
Yep, I understand. All right, well, I'm just going to hold you at 3 to 5 though. But I agree. I've seen companies and obviously normally larger companies, I guess, that would really drill into it and got the resources. It's not unusual to have 10 sort of personas. So have you seen, what's the biggest you've seen in your experience?
So look, it's interesting. There's probably 2 ways. So there's the biggest I've seen, but then also probably the biggest that I've seen used effectively. So I think it's around, if I think why most of the organizations, certainly that I work with or I interact with, they're at a level of maturity in their customer experience maturity where they're dealing with 3 or 5 personas well.
Yep.
Don't get me wrong, there are some very larger numbers that start getting out there. But mindful, when you start hearing really, really, really large numbers, if people are talking about that, I sometimes challenge or question, are you actually now not really talking about personas, you're talking about segments? And that can sometimes be a really, really big giveaway. If people are talking about really large numbers, often they may actually be talking about segments and labeling it incorrectly as a persona.
Yeah, yep, good point. conscious of us not talking way too long about every topic, because we could easily talk on an hour on personas, but we'll keep this brief. So a couple more questions. You mentioned COVID changed things with persona. There are different ways people use technology, etc. So I guess that begs the question, these aren't sort of set and forget things, are they? You can't just go through a process, build a persona, and then sort of walk away and go, we're done, see you in 10 years, right? How often should people be looking at refreshing their personas?
Yeah, goodness no. And if people are using personas they created pre-COVID, they are well overdue. So, I think it's fairly well accepted and understood that customer needs and expectations are forever changing. And so similarly, our persona models need to change and evolve over time as well. And so sometimes they're really, really small edits. So for example, like there's persona sets where we're coming in and adding sections to, but sometimes there may be much more significant time and effort requirements. If I think about an organization I was recently doing some work with, we actually introduced a new persona to their set, and we retired one of the personas recently just because they had some changing needs there as well. And so I guess, look, if you're not at least critically looking at them, at least on an annual basis, that's probably my best encouragement, is at least go and have a good look at them on an annual basis. But to some extent, you just need to be guided by whenever you do see really significant changes in your customer ecosystems, in your organization or your broader environment.
Excellent. I'm going to hit you up for some top tips in a second, but before I get to that, I'm going to ask you one more question, because it really prompted me. Now, obviously, and I've mentioned this, and it's not a sales pitch, but you do this for a living, right? So there's people out there in the world that go and help organizations develop their personas, etc. But internally, where is it driven by? Like, are personas typically coming from marketing teams, or is it now dedicated CX roles, or is it thrown to the call center manager, or like who's driving the projects that you're seeing?
Oh, I feel like this could be a whole hour conversation. Because it does in a broader sense, it starts going at, well, where does customer experience?
That's right. Who's responsible? Who's accountable?
Let's not open that one today. And I think it ultimately comes back to, from a human perspective, we are engaged by people that sit in all sorts of weird and wonderful locations inside organizations. And I guess my point is that as long as the sponsor that you have that's initiating it, whether you're a consultant, whether you're an internal team, have clear sponsorship, understand what they're trying to achieve by implementing personas, and make sure that they've got the resources, the budget, and the approval authorities to be able to actually do something with the fact that you're developing these things. Otherwise, as I said, you create these things, and unfortunately, they sit there like wall art or sit on a virtual shelf somewhere. Yeah,
and we talk about customer journey mapping in another episode, but I often find the same thing happens. Everyone gets very excited, builds journey maps, and never looks at them again, right?
Yeah, so unfortunately, so that does happen.
All right, let's hit them with the top tips, Rod. So, if people are looking at customer personas, what are your top tips?
Yeah, definitely. So, look, number one, I think let's go right back to what we said at the beginning. Be deliberate in our language when we're playing in a customer experience space. So segments are segments, and personas are personas. And we don't want to bash people with it, let's say, in terms of language, but let's make sure we're educating people on the way through about what we're doing and why we're doing it. Top tip number 2 definitely would be make sure you understand and you have a need or a reason for why you are creating the personas, and then it's not like, as I said, not a one size fits all. So tailor your template to make sure that you're actually delivering something that meets that need, and so ultimately your personas will get used. And look, third one, and this is not just for customer personas, it's probably nearly for many of the CX artifacts that I'll talk about, but it's not just something that a small group of 3 people will do. So my challenge or encouragement is to leveling up your persona delivery and development, is bringing in as many people inside an organization to help you. Because ultimately, if these people are all contributing, they're much more likely to actually then own the outcomes and actually do something with it once you've delivered them.
Yep, fantastic tips. Rod, thank you for giving up a bit of your time and helping educate the world on customer personas. If you want to hear more of Rod talking about other customer experience matters, tune in to the CX Matters podcast. We also have a bunch of articles on the AXPA website as well. Thanks again for joining us, and please make sure you subscribe to the CX Matters podcast. Bye for now.
Bye.